What's up, guys? 28 years later is finally here. We're going to do in all the spoilers because there was a lot I could not tell you in the spoiler-free review. So let's get into it.
Look at what's in front of you.
What is up, guys? Welcome to all the spoilers. 28 years later, I still can't believe this movie is finally here. It seems like forever, almost 20 years ago since we got Weeks Later. But like I said in the intro, there's a lot that I just could not tell you, or at least in my review style. I like to not give you anything that felt like maybe a surprise for me. Usually my general rule is if it's not in the trailer, I don't tell it. I don't spill any kind of beans, and sometimes I don't even tell stuff that's in the trailer, and I'll tell you, don't watch the trailer, because I hate spoilers myself, right? I don't always get it right. Sometimes I will let something that kind of disturbs somebody, like, wow, I can't believe you actually said that. I've screwed up in the past, okay? Maybe I've learned from those lessons. But those that watched my review that don't like spoilers, when you went out and saw this movie, I hope to God that you saw something in the movie that surprised you, because I didn't tell you about it, okay? That's just my big thing with spoilers. Also, we've been getting so many pictures and messages and even like reviews for Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm, and we couldn't be more happy. This book was inspired by our granddaughter Delilah, and it's a fun fantasy adventure, and a lot of you guys that have read it have reached out and said, wow, this is really heartwarming, and it's actually inspired our own children that have read the book. You know, it's for children, it's for adults. It's, you know, if you like Harry Potter type stuff, then you will definitely love this book. But there's also big like Instagram and TikTok influencers that have read the book and left some really nice messages on there. Catherine Crico is one of them. She left this really nice video.
Okay guys, I just finished reading Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm by T.L. McCoy, and I am obsessed. Seriously, I couldn't put it down. If you love magical worlds like Harry Potter or the fast-paced thrill of Percy Jackson, then this is your next favorite book.
So if you haven't bought the book yet, definitely do. If you've read the book, leave us a review on Amazon. It really, really helps. But let's get into this spoiler review for 28 years later. The opening scene is that Teletubby scene that we saw in the trailer. That's Teletubbies, right? But that particular scene actually ties into the very ending of the movie. I don't usually go in chronological order when I do these spoiler reviews. I just kind of go off stream of consciousness. I can't divulge any names, but a dear friend of mine reached out to me who lives in the UK, and he asked me, did you catch the ending? What was going on with the ending? And I was like, can you tell me a little bit more? Because I kind of got an idea. I figured that ending tied into the beginning of the movie, but there was more to it. He noticed that American viewers did not pick up on the messaging that they were giving in this movie. The viewers from, you know, the UK, most of them picked up on it, and I'm sure a lot of my UK viewers and others maybe picked up on, I guess, the undercurrent message that this movie is trying to send. And what that was, thanks to my friend that told me, there was this guy that you could equate to the British Mr. Rogers, right? By the name of Jimmy Savile, I think his name is. I've never heard of this person before. I guess this is just one of those things that's localized to a certain area. And sometimes we think a story that we have in our own country, we think it's so massive and so big, and then we tell somebody, you know, in another country, and they're like, crickets, that like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was kind of how I was when he was telling me about Jimmy Savile. I guess Jimmy Savile was a huge case over there involving some pretty bad stuff. Okay, I don't know how much I can tell you on the YouTube platform without getting in trouble. So you can put two and two together. It involves children. But they kind of made that a part of this movie, you know, in the subtext, right? And it does definitely tie into the very end of the movie when Spike, he's on his own and he has gotten to this group of, I guess we'll call them young baddies. They all have the Jimmy wig on, the Jimmy Savile wig on. Going forward into the sequel to this movie, it could really mean bad stuff for Spike. And I'm definitely curious to see where that goes. But backing up, let's talk about the characters in this movie, because I think this movie, maybe even more than the previous two, leans heavily on character drama. don't get me wrong, the first two movies had really strong characters that we felt for. And I'd say it even steps it up quite a bit in weeks. And those two movies, I think the rage virus and the ragers were much more prominent. And they took up a good amount of screen time, you know. But more importantly, you just felt that threat. Like, it was so intense, so strong, even scary. Whereas I think that sort of took a back seat in this movie, leaning more heavily on the character drama, which is fine if you want to go that way. I think in years to come, I think this movie is going to be accepted more to those that didn't like it. If you watched my review, I was in the middle with it. There were things that I didn't like, you know, having the Ragers take kind of a back seat, and then there were things that I loved about it, like the character dynamics. But I think, again, in time, I think people will come to appreciate this movie more for what it is, because it's definitely an artistic statement. I like movies that have ambiguity in them, and this one definitely has that, especially to the American viewers. And I think this is a movie that stays with you. And I think this is a good topic for maybe like a later discussion. Maybe even I'll propose it to Davey and Nick on our next Hit the Bricks podcast. About movies that stay with you. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to like the movie, but for some reason you just cannot get it out of your head. And I think this movie falls into that category. I think people that love it can't stop thinking about it, and I think people that were perplexed by it and maybe even hated it probably can't stop thinking about it even more. You know, I think I'm going to stand by that. But the divide between the audience score and the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is quite large. Like, it's not the largest ever, okay? I think it's like somewhere around 65% for the audience. And then for the critics, it's 90, in the 90s somewhere. Although it was slowly creeping down. But the characters were so strong, and I think if the characters were not strong in this movie, then it would have really, really failed, and it would have sucked. But luckily, I think that's what confuses everybody. Wait, this isn't giving me the scary, crazy Rager shit, but I happen to love these characters, especially Spike. The first half of the movie was Spike and his father, and they do a good job of making you really like the father, Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. But this movie doesn't play it safe. You know, I like stories that let's make the audience really, really get behind and love a character, and then let's piss them off. And that's what they did with this movie. And I think what they were trying to do is show that this isn't Darth Vader. This isn't a monster. He's just a human being who made a mistake. And we can show you the backstory of that and what led him down this path to infidelity. Not really, you know, as far as the story goes, place judgment on him. We'll let the audience do that. But we're just trying to, I guess, give you a broader view of who this person is. He's not like a horrible human being. These conditions led him to make a mistake. Don't get me wrong. It's still a huge, huge mistake. But he's still a human being, and he's still a good father. And that is why Spike is so torn up about this whole thing, because he's a good father. If he wasn't a good father, then Spike probably wouldn't have given a shit. Watching somebody who is your mentor, your idol, make such a huge mistake is just earth-shattering to a child. And I think they captured that beautifully in this movie. But after Spike, you know, finds out about his father's infidelity, then he is royally pissed, and he just wants to protect his mother. He wants to be with his mother. And so the second half of the movie is him with his mother on this kind of journey to find Dr. Kelson, played by Ray Fiennes, who is a very eccentric character. And I think this is the point where people started getting a little frustrated with the movie. You know, those that wanted more of what we got before the first two movies. Just because the Ragers, yeah, they're still there, but they sort of take a back seat. You do have this heroic young character who was very charismatic and funny at times, actually, by the name of Eric. He saves Spike and Isla, but then he's actually killed by one of the Ragers. So Dr. Kelson literally boils him down to nothing but a skull, because he's got like the skull or the bone temple, which the next movie will be called. Dr. Kelson's an interesting character because he appreciates all life. You get the assumption that he also appreciates the Ragers' life, because he has a chance to actually kill one of the Ragers, but he ends up just putting him to sleep, knocking him out. And they don't really explore why he did that, like throughout the rest of the movie. You know, all you know is that he appreciates life. So does he just refuse to kill Ragers? Or maybe he kills them only in, like, you know, when he has to? I don't know. They didn't really explore that beyond, you know, what he did. But then the biggest surprise, Isla, of course, she has cancer. She's going to die. And he tells her she's going to die. So then she does die. Did he kill her? I'm trying to remember. I'm just being honest with you guys, okay? Because sometimes I don't remember every single thing. I believe he did kind of put her out of her misery. But then he gives her skull to her son. This movie takes up a good portion doing all this stuff. And if we think back to the first two movies, even though they are quite different from each other, they move at sort of a breakneck pace. You know, everything revolves around the danger. Yes, there are slower moments in weeks and days. Even when the Ragers aren't coming after them, you still feel their presence. You feel like they're coming. There are moments in this movie where the Ragers, you're not even worried about them. You're just kind of focused on what's going on, which is a good transition, I guess, to the Ragers. I like that this movie, they posed the question, okay, this is 28 years later after this happened. Would the Ragers evolve? And they do. Because there's a side effect to the rage virus where it's like a steroid. And so they're all like kind of roided out. Then you got some of them that are like overweight and they're just like crawling. I like that this movie did that. Ironically, though, when you got roided Ragers, you would think that they would pose more of a threat or be more scary than the previous two movies. But funny enough, they're not. I'm hoping going forward into the sequel, and I think there's going to be a part 3, maybe they focus more heavily on the horror aspect of this and putting the Ragers more front and center. You know, the next movie could be the Halloween Kills, although none of that Evil Dies Tonight shit, okay? Let's keep that out of here. So yeah, guys, I think that'll wrap up all the spoilers for this. Again, it's a movie that has definitely stayed with me. Beautifully shot by Danny Boyle as well. I should have known better, though. With Danny Boyle coming back behind the camera, he's not going to want to repeat what he did in the first movie. And I think that because so much time has been since the last movie, that they've had a lot of time to actually figure out which direction they wanted to go. And I think there have been a few script rewrites on this. So I'm not surprised, having seen it now, that it is quite a different movie than the previous two. It's still my least favorite, but as far as a great trilogy, I still think it's a great trilogy. I definitely don't hate this movie at all. So I'm curious to see it again, if I'm being honest. So let me know what you guys think of this movie down in the comments. Many of you have probably seen it by now, and I'm looking forward to getting down in there with you guys and talking about it, okay? Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do fever Fridays. Follow my Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Become a channel member. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and Drumdum out.